and we're here today to discuss a sweeping, unprecedented, and historically successful operation that my administration has carried out in recent weeks to arrest, prosecute, and permanently remove members of foreign drug cartels from American soil.
It began quietly in Virginia, but it ended behind reinforced steel bars in Minnesota. The first crack in the system appeared before sunrise when federal agents executed a sealed search warrant at the home of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson. Phones, encrypted laptops, external drives, everything was seized. Investigators confirmed the leak she had been chasing was real, but what Nathanson uncovered wasn't just a leak, it was evidence of a betrayal buried deep inside the American justice system. At exactly 4:47 a.m. in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the real operation was already underway. The city lay frozen beneath a layer of winter ice, streets empty, temperatures hovering near zero. While most of the Twin Cities slept, the federal command center pulsed with quiet urgency. Screens glowed in the dark as FBI Special Agent Marcus Chun stood motionless, staring at a digital map filled with dots, lines, and timestamps. For 9 months, his team had followed the money, tracked communications, and audited thousands of immigration cases. Every trail led back to one person, Judge Layla Mahed. For 11 years, Judge Mahed had worn the black robe of an immigration judge. To the public, she was respected, even admired. She spoke about compassion, fairness, and efficiency. She decided who would be allowed to stay in the United States and who would be removed. Her courtroom was seen as a gateway to safety for asylum seekers. But behind closed doors, investigators discovered something far darker. Judge Mahed was not just ruling on cases, she was selling outcomes. At 4:52 a.m., the final authorization came through. Execute immediately. This was not a routine arrest or a political gesture. This was a decapitation strike against a corruption network that had quietly compromised the integrity of the U.S. immigration system. Between January 2021 and December 2024, Judge Mahed approved 3,847 asylum applications. Under normal procedures, each case requires months of background checks, interviews, document verification, and security clearance. Yet Mahed's approvals were being processed in a matter of hours. A routine audit conducted in March 2023 flagged the anomaly. In 1 week alone, 214 asylum cases had been approved under her authority. Statistically, it was impossible. When the Treasury Department launched a parallel investigation, the explanation became clear. American Asylum had been given a price tag, $18,000 per approval. The payments did not go directly to the judge. They moved through a maze of shell companies registered in Nevada, Delaware, and Wyoming, entities with professional names designed to look legitimate, global consulting firms, legal advisory groups. In reality, they were laundering fronts for a criminal syndicate known to federal intelligence as the Somali Brotherhood Network. Active since at least 2019, the group operated across 7 states, from Minnesota to Maine, with connections as far west as California. Their business model was simple but devastating. Smuggle people into the country, forge or manipulate their paperwork, and use a federal judge to legitimize their status. In just 4 years, Judge Mahed processed more than $69 million in fraudulent immigration approvals.
The latest attempt to restrict the amount of migrants who claim asylum between ports of entry at the southern border.
Treasury analysts later confirmed that matching sums had been wired through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Dubai, but the network didn't stop at immigration fraud. Using the cover of legal asylum cases, the syndicate moved contraband across state lines, cached narcotics and weapons hidden inside shipments that Judge Mahed ensured would never face scrutiny. At 5:30 a.m., a convoy of 18 unmarked federal vehicles rolled out. FBI, DEA, ICE, and U.S. Marshals moved through the silent streets without lights or sirens. 7 locations were targeted simultaneously. Judge Mahed's downtown chambers were the primary objective. Her private residence and 3 industrial warehouses were secondary targets. The first breach occurred at 5:18 a.m. A battering ram struck the reinforced door of her office. The frame splintered. Agents poured inside with weapons drawn. The office was empty, but the evidence was overwhelming. Behind a false wall panel, agents discovered stacks of cash.
Customs and Border Protection has seized over $14,000 in cash from 2 Somali-born U.S. citizens
and 11 encrypted burner phones. Each device was linked to a different courier, fixer, or logistics coordinator within the criminal network. The messages recovered from those phones were not vague. They were direct orders: approve application without interview, clear transfer by Wednesday, no secondary review. The phones contained more than 4,000 such messages. Judge Mahed was not a passive participant. She was issuing commands that bypassed national security protocols. Inside a locked filing cabinet, agents found handwritten ledgers. Each page listed case numbers, dates, and payment amounts. One ledger alone documented 892 fraudulent approvals, each marked with a red check. The amounts ranged from $15,000 to $22,000 per case. This was not chaos. It was an organized system. At the same time, another team breached Judge Mahed's $1.9 million home in the affluent Edina neighborhood. In the master bedroom, agents opened 3 safes. The first contained hundreds of thousands of dollars in bundled cash. The second held 23 passports bearing different names but identical photographs. The third contained 4 encrypted hard drives. Those drives became the backbone of the prosecution. They contained video recordings of meetings between Judge Mahed and cartel operatives. Audio files captured negotiations over pricing and volume. Bank records revealed more than $127 million in illicit transfers moving through her accounts. The most alarming discovery, however, occurred at 5:44 a.m. in Brooklyn Park. Federal agents breached a warehouse registered as a storage facility for household goods. Inside, they found a distribution hub. Crates contained dozens of unregistered AR-15 rifles modified for automatic fire. Hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition were stacked nearby. DEA agents then uncovered vacuum-sealed bricks of fentanyl weighing nearly 300 pounds. Analysts later concluded that the seized narcotics alone were sufficient to cause mass casualties across the state.
Authorities are calling it the largest drug bust in Minnesota history, with almost 1,000 pounds of meth taken off the street.
Shipping manifests recovered at the scene detailed outgoing deliveries to 14 major U.S. cities, all scheduled within the next 10 days. The operation had stopped a nationwide disaster. As arrests unfolded across Minnesota, one question remained unanswered. Where was Judge Mahed? At 6:41 a.m., an ICE agent at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport flagged suspicious activity. A private jet had filed a last-minute flight plan to Dubai. The passenger manifest listed a single name, Layla Mahed. Special Agent Chun ordered immediate interdiction. Federal vehicles raced toward Terminal 2. Inside the private aviation lounge, Judge Mahed moved calmly carrying a single leather bag. She appeared composed, confident. She believed she was untouchable. At 6:58 a.m., agents entered the lounge. She turned slowly as they identified themselves. There was no panic. When informed of the charges corruption, racketeering, conspiracy, immigration fraud, and money laundering, she asked calmly, "On what authority?" As the cuffs were secured, she whispered words that would later be noted in official reports. "You have no idea what you've just done." By 8:15 a.m., federal prosecutors unsealed a 74-page indictment. Judge Mahed faced dozens of charges carrying a potential sentence exceeding 3 centuries. The indictment named 29 co-conspirators, smugglers, forgers, money launderers, and facilitators operating under her protection. By noon, coordinated arrests were underway in 7 states. Millions in cash were seized.
Last week, a crackdown in New Hampshire netted dozens of arrests and $100,000.
Warehouses were shut down. The network collapsed within hours. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Judge Mahed had communicated with at least 11 other immigration officials across the country. 19 federal employees were placed under investigation. Analysts estimated that nearly 47,000 asylum applications nationwide had been fraudulently approved during the same period. The financial damage exceeded $1.4 billion. The human cost was worse. Weapons seized during the raids were later ballistically matched to unsolved homicides. Narcotics traced to the network were linked to dozens of overdose deaths. The consequences of her actions extended far beyond paperwork. Judge Mahed's trial began on March 18, 2025. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented ledgers, recordings, bank records, and testimony from cooperating witnesses. The jury deliberated for just 11 hours before returning a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the presiding judge spoke with visible anger. "You were entrusted with safeguarding the law," he said. "Instead, you sold it." Judge Mahed was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison without parole in order to forfeit more than $31 million in assets. By August 2025, 41 additional officials had been convicted. Nearly $500 million in dirty money was seized. Immigration reforms followed. Fraudulent asylum approvals dropped by more than 90% nationwide. Judge Mahed believed she was above the law, and now she lives under it. And corruption does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it wears a robe. Sometimes it speaks softly about compassion. But when investigators follow the numbers, the truth always surfaces. Stay vigilant.